Now we've got another one, which seems to have been lost in the weeds of Supreme Court decisions, in the weeds of the Iran strikes and the subsequent ceasefire, peace in the Middle East. We've got another story which has to be covered over and over and over again, because I believe it is the biggest scandal. Well, it's the biggest scandal since they spied on Trump's campaign. It's the biggest scandal since Joe Biden was essentially taking bribes from foreign nations. It's the biggest scandal since other Joe Biden scandals. But check this out, because the autopen scandal is once again starting to take front and center. Here we go.
So when we broke the autopen scandal a couple months ago, our first tweet was whoever controlled the autopen controlled the White House. And that's exactly right. The Biden administration should have invoked the 25th Amendment. It was clear to everyone he was incapacitated. I don't think anybody argues now with any credibility that Biden was fully in control, at least towards the end or second half of the administration. That's why he dropped out of the presidential race. And so what the Senate looked at was how the autopen was used as a device, an instrumentality to avoid invoking the 25th Amendment, which the vice president and a majority of the cabinet should have done. That's what the 25th Amendment says. They instead decided they preferred an incapacitated president. And so why exactly they preferred it? The answer seems kind of obvious to me. It's because the staffers could take over the White House and control the decisions. But that is the constitutional abuse. That is a scandal. The 25th Amendment's there for a reason. In 1967, it passed after 4 presidents were assassinated in 100 years. 2 were incapacitated. It's a clear process to deal with the situation we had with Joe Biden.
So obviously he said something very salient there. He said they didn't want to invoke the 25th Amendment because then the staffers would have control. Now remember that they had a sitting vice president. They could have handed control to Kamala Harris, but there was no one in the Democrat Party that wanted to do that. Remember, they didn't want her to be vice president, really. They wanted her there as a token to help Joe Biden get elected. But there was nobody, when you read the insider communications of the Democrat staffers, of the Democrat Party, they didn't want Kamala Harris anywhere near the White House. They thought she was incompetent. They thought she was a buffoon. So they didn't want to hand it over to her. And so the staffers, but she had to be in on this. The whole thing is amazing. This whole thing is a huge, major scandal. We did not have a proper functioning sitting president for years in the last administration. Now check out Waters, because Waters nails it on the head as well. Very short clip here.
One of his top aides just testified to Congress that she directed autopen signatures without knowing who gave the final approval.
So you've got a staffer who is signing documents without any knowledge if the president has actually approved this. It cannot be approved by his wife. It cannot be approved by the vice president. It cannot be approved by the Secretary of State or the Attorney General or anybody else. These documents had to be approved by the president. And a staffer saying the president approves it when the president didn't actually approve it is not copacetic. So you've got a staffer basically admitting, I signed the documents. I have no idea if they were ever actually approved. Now I want to clue you in. I got 2 more segments that I want to get to on this. The first is just about the fact that this was an open invitation for bribery and corruption. We're going to get that from the Benny Show. And then we're going to dive into the most recent one, which is Anthony Bernal, who is Jill Biden's chief of staff, now coming to the forefront as the lead architect of this entire autopen scandal, and possibly the one who was issuing all of the orders and saying illegitimately, dishonestly, that Joe Biden had approved them. Because remember, he's not Joe Biden's chief of staff. He's Jill Biden's chief of staff, essentially making Jill Biden the de facto president. So let's dive in first with the Benny Show and talk about the open corruption that this fostered.
Trafficking, I mean, that happens because of an open border. 25 million, many hundreds of thousands of children because of Joe Biden. Now we learn that Joe Biden had terminal illness the entire time he was in office. Maybe this was what all of the vacations, 577 days on vacation. Perhaps he was getting cancer treatment. We have had doctors on the program all yesterday saying all of Joe Biden's activities, the weakness, the falling, the fog, the brain fog, that's because of cancer medication. They were hiding this from the American people. What should happen to the people who hid this from us? Are Joe Biden's acts constitutional? What's your measure on Jill Biden?
Well, that'll be decided at the courts, but I'm sure we'll write somebody a strong letter and move on about it. I don't think anybody really brought to justice over this. You've got staffers. I would look. Tennessee has had a history of this. We had a governor several.
Now, unfortunately, what he said there is probably true. The Congress is absolutely feckless. Half of them are not real patriotic Americans. 90% of the Republicans are actually Democrats. All the Democrats are Democrats and basically socialists. 99% of them are controlled by the globalist cabal of corruptocrats. They're socialists, they're communists, they're evil anti-American deep state stooges. So to see anything come out of Congress on this is probably too far, a bridge too far. No, we need Kash Patel. We need Deputy Director Bongino, and we need Attorney General Bondi to take this up. They need to be the ones issuing subpoenas, opening investigations, and bringing these people to justice. These are criminal charges. Forget Congress and the ridiculous oversight. Use that to bring people out into the light and figure out where you're going to go with your investigation. But there need to be real criminal penalties for this.
Governors ago, he's since passed away, but he sold pardons. You can look it up. His name was Ray Blanton. It made national news, and I mean they wrote songs, "Pardon Me, Ray," and it was a cash for clemency deal, and that's exactly what I think you're going to find out. You're going to find staffers that were able to take forms, get them, and run them through some sort of bogus legal system, and then they auto-penned them. And there's probably people out on the street that shouldn't be, but somebody got rich off that. And wow. and I think those people, I hate to say it, but you'll see something probably horrible happen to some of those people because it goes up the chain. This is a very dangerous town to play games in.
So you're saying that the Biden staffers took payouts and just ran the auto pen for certain pardons.
I have no direct proof of that, but I'm just talking about history. And if you got somebody making $100,000 a year and somebody offers you $250,000 in some safety deposit box, yeah. I mean, yeah. Look at all those. Look at Clinton's.
Absolutely true. And when you couple that with the fact that the Biden administration in the last days of their tenure issued 8,000 pardons. Let me double check that I have that number right. I believe the number was 8,000 pardons, which was just, I mean, that is orders of magnitude more than anybody else ever in the history of the United States. So if anybody in the comments can fact check me on that one, I believe the number that has been bandied about by a bunch of people is that there was a total of 8,000 pardons. Now imagine that, $250,000 a piece, $50,000 for some of them, $100,000 for some of them. Think of the money that potentially changed hands in a corrupt pardon scandal. Now, exacerbate that, draw that out into the staffers actually running the show, not just for money, but also for all of their pet agendas. Realize that so many of the policies that the Biden administration pushed were not even policies that Biden himself espoused while he was a senator or even a vice president. Now, Biden was utterly corrupt. He was as far left as you could think for a normal Democrat. But there was a lot of policies. He was never in for an open border, him personally. But as soon as he got in office, that border was opened wider than an open sieve. And so there were a lot of cases where you looked at policies going, this is not something that Joe Biden normally espoused. And if he was going to do it, he wouldn't do it. He would do it on the down low. He wouldn't do it out for everybody to see. But now come to find out that you've got this auto pen scandal. You've potentially got hundreds of millions of dollars that changed hands for bogus pardons. And now check this out, because now you've got Jill Biden's chief of staff implicated as the potential ringleader to this entire soft coup that took place inside the White House over the last 4 years.
What do you make of Congress now having to issue the subpoena to get Jill Biden's, let's just say, they keep calling it the work husband. We'll just go with it. I like it. The work husband to come by and to speak with Congress. What do you think of that subpoena?
Yeah, so first thing, I think everyone in the audience needs to know credit's owed to Congressman Comer. He's doing a great job here at the Oversight Committee of making sure that this little coterie of staffers that really ran the White House are now being brought to the mattress and being asked to explain what it was they were doing, exercising the Article 2 powers of the presidency when Joe Biden was in no way, shape, or form capable of serving as commander-in-chief. So
the person they're talking about, her work husband, is her chief of staff, Anthony Bernal. So Anthony Bernal is now emerging as the focus point of who ran this entire autopen scandal. And he has so far dodged congressional subpoenas. I'm saying subpoena the man, and if he does not show up on the date and the time, you send it immediately to Bondi and have federal marshals arrest his butt and throw him in prison. There need to be real criminal penalties for all of this. Let's keep going.
As you know, Brianna, a lot of people in DC just want to say, this is old news. This story is stale. It's time to move on. And so Comer and a couple of others are saying, no, now is the time to bring them in to testify. And if they won't come willingly, let's subpoena them and figure out what did they know about the president's mental capacity? When did they know it? And then what did they do with that knowledge? Because here's the really interesting part of the autopen scandal. The autopen itself is an issue, of course. What documents were signed by the autopen and who was using the autopen and under what terms. But the real issue is, did the president of the United States authorize those individuals to use the autopen? The Constitution gives executive power to one person and one person only, not a group of people, not a Politburo, not the work husband of Dr. Biden. Only Joe Biden was supposed to be exercising Article 2 power under our Constitution. And
so what you've got emerging now is that Jill Biden used her chief of staff, the person who basically worked most closely with her, to essentially run the presidency. Just like Jill Biden showed up and ran a cabinet meeting because Joe Biden was completely incompetent and incoherent. We're now finding out that most likely most of this presidential authority was wielded by Jill Biden, either in conjunction with and through Anthony Bernal, or by Anthony Bernal himself, just acting as the, using his authority as chief of staff to Jill Biden to get in there and run things. This is absolutely a major scandal. And anybody involved with auto-penning documents without the express authority and approval of Joe Biden need to go to prison. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They need to end up behind bars. We are not going to let this story go. We are going to keep trumpeting the story because we have to have a resolution on this. We have to find out who is doing this. We have to find out if hundreds of millions of dollars changed hands. If they did, all of those pardons need to be null and void, specifically for people like Fauci and others who need to be brought to justice for what they did to this country during the whole COVID scam. There are so many things that have to be undone. And again, there have to be real material penalties. Otherwise, there is no deterrent. Otherwise, the Dems and the Libs will get in and simply do this again because they realize that even if they get caught, nothing will happen to them. There have to be real material losses. Loss of power, loss of prestige, loss of money, loss of freedom for these people.